Welcome back to Fast Market on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, and I believe Kevin Hinks is joining me on the phone. But let's bring in our next guest for our cash tag segment, and that's going to be Landon Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com. Welcome to the show, Landon.
Hey, Tom. Good to be here. Thank you.
Hey, by the way, I ran a Twitter poll yesterday. Best NBA player of all time, Michael Jordan, with over 80% of the votes versus Shaq, your favorite. So just
Listen, I think that Jordan is probably the greatest of all time. However, first pick, you're taking Shaq. He's much better than the second pick at center. That's my opinion.
Okay, I'll let you have that one. That's a great point to make. Okay, Landon, we're talking Roku. Do you have any data that's positive on this stock? Because it has been in a downtrend for the last 6 months or so. I mean, this stock traded over $490. What kind of data are you guys seeing at LikeFolio? Are we seeing a turnaround anytime soon?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, as an investor, you're holding it at $490 back in July, and now you're staring at $160. That is a big sell-off, cutting about 2/3 of the market cap. Very tough position to be in for investors. But I will say I do have a little bit of good news. I think that Roku is very strong. They've got, it's one of those situations where you look at the company and you look at the industry. Clearly, Roku is the #1 in the industry. They're doing fantastic. They're the leader in streaming devices. They're even getting into content themselves with the Roku channel, doing well in that as also. So then you kind of ask yourself, all right, how is streaming overall doing? We can tell you that streaming on a device is up 11%. Purchase intent or people talking about streaming on any device is up 11% quarter over quarter, down a little bit year over year. But among all of the competitors, if you think about Apple, Chromecast, Fire TV, Roku is by far the strongest of those. They had a big lead in the pandemic. Everything jumped up then. And, of course, they all pulled back as kind of life started to get back to normal. But I think Roku won a lot of hearts. They have a very high level of happiness. And I think that they are the clear leader. Actually, they are the #1 smart TV operating system. People don't know that. Most of the time when you buy a TV, Roku's the one that powers it. Most people don't know that, but you click on, you got Roku there, and you can watch pretty much anything you want using that Roku. So I would say that overall, Roku data is looking pretty strong. You can see that over the last quarter, quarter over quarter on a 30-day moving average, they're the only ones of their competitors who are actually picking up people talking about using that device to stream. This is saying, I'm using a Roku device to stream. There's hundreds of ways that people actually say that. That's our job, is to translate. But you can see that they're the one that are kind of leading the pack. They're the positive side of things, where the other three are actually losing a little bit. So they're #1 and they're expanding their lead. So it's just a question of how strong do you think this industry is? Of course, as an investor, you want to have the best company in a rising industry. Right now, streaming has taken a little bit of a hit as people get back to normal. But if you're going to be in this sector, this is the company to have. And I think that at these prices, it's starting to look like a bargain. It's starting to look like a strong stock that's on sale.
Landon, and I'm back, guys. Sorry, I'm on the phone having some internet problems, but I'm here to ask Landon questions. And here it is, right, Landon. Is this the classic story from Roku about the baby in the bathwater, right? You had all these growth companies sell off, and no one was saved, or very few names were saved. And Roku went down with the rest of this group, but their free cash flow looks great. Their balance sheet looks great. They're scaling. Their revenue growth is 41%. They're growing into new markets. They continue to move. But this stock has come so far down. And unlike other growth stocks in groups that get sold off, this makes money every quarter. Some of the expectations the last 4 quarters were for it to be not profitable, but it always was. It always made money. And they have a fair amount of cash for what they do. Isn't this possibly, not for sure, we don't guarantee anything here, could you paint a scenario, Landon, where this is Roku getting sold off with the rest of growth, and maybe it should have come down some of the way, but not this far?
Yeah, so this is a situation where you got, very high multiples, and if anything happens, that leverage goes both ways, I guess, on multiples. What I'm trying to say, and yes, everything is sold off, and I absolutely think you can make the argument that this is too far, too fast as far as a sell-off goes. At 2/3 off the top, maybe 490 was a little rich, but I think 160 is a bit extreme here, and you can see if you go back to the beginning of 2020, look at that purple line on this chart. They were just kind of one of 4 streaming services. They did a very good job in the pandemic, kind of established themselves, and then took the lead from there, and they haven't looked back. Everything has kind of come back a little bit, but overall, they are the dominant player in this industry, and I think it's a very strong industry. And what I also love is this company is very innovative. They're smart. It used to be you'd have to buy the Roku device, then they got the little stick, and now they're just going around all that and just going straight into TVs. So I think they had some trouble over the last quarter because of supply chain issues, not necessarily with their devices, but with less TVs selling. But now that TVs are, starting to come back and supply chain hopefully gets worked out over the next little bit, I think we're going to see them selling a lot more because they are, again, the #1 smart TV OS. So they're out there. And not only that, but they're, the management showing that they're able to get into content. They've got the Roku channel, which is doing extremely well, up about 46% quarter over quarter. People talking about using that. They've got some original stuff. Not all of it is original. One of my favorite shows, Billions, is on there. If you guys like the stock market, you'll love that one. They just bought a quarter of a million square foot facility in New York for producing content. So they're really getting into this. And if you look at happiness overall across all of these, Roku only is second to Apple TV. And I think a lot of that has to do with Ted Lasso. It's a fantastic show. It's 86% positive. But if you separate Roku's devices and just look at the Roku channel, they're at 88% happiness, which is far higher than Apple TVs. So they're doing great on the device segment, as well as getting into content and showing that they're very capable with the content. So, the fact that they've sold off this much and are the #1 clear leader in the sector says to me that this could be a good opportunity at these price levels.
Yeah, Landon, Billions, great show until this season. Miserable, horrible, downhill on this this season.
Very negative.
Yeah,
Very negative.
Now that they got rid of Axe, it's not. I mean, I can't even watch it anymore. It's so bad. But that being said, when you look at this comparison, over 56 million people subscribe through Roku, and this just seems. We talked about this a couple of years ago when they started blowing up. The stock was going crazy as an aggregator. Now that I've got 7 subscriptions to different streaming services plus cable because I'm old, you need that aggregation at this point, right? And that's what I think propels them. But when you look at that and all the different streaming services, is that their niche moving forward? Because they're coming out saying that they're going to build their own TV now. There's a speculation there, which would help once the supply chain issues get out of the way. But is that maybe their niche here moving forward, is the fact that nobody can keep track of anything anymore?
Yeah, I think that, and that's where they became so popular, was you had to have all these different devices and, do you have this and do you have that and all that stuff. And now it's just, if you got a Roku, you're good. You got everything in one spot. You do need to cut the cord, Tom. It's time. But it's fantastic to just have everything in one spot. And, as far as making their own TV, that would kind of be going back to their roots, right? I mean, they started with a device that you plugged into your TV, and it was this magical thing that could aggregate everything all in one spot. So, they integrated with TVs and Samsungs and all the other makers. But it would be interesting to make that move to start producing TVs because then they could control the experience all the way through. But either way, I think that this company has shown the ability to not only dominate from a very low position. If you think 3 or 4 years ago, very few people even heard of Roku as an investment, but now they're the leader and they're getting into content, maybe making TVs. I love where they're at. So I would say that at these price levels, long term, I'm definitely bullish at these price levels. Also, short term, I'm bullish. If you look at the LikeFolio earnings score from -100 to +100, we've got a +51 on Roku. So we are bullish going into this earnings report. I'm expecting them to do well. Everything for us is pointing up, not only purchase intent, but happiness. So, again, bullish on the company. short term and long term.
Bullish.
Landon,
Go ahead, Kev.
A 51 is a pretty solid number coming from LikeFolio. A lot of your numbers tend to hover in the lower levels, and maybe that's just a sign of the times we're in. But when you give a 51, try to tell our viewers what that means. What does a 51 mean? It's negative 100, it's a positive 100. Is that a table thumping, recommendation, or are you looking at, hey, they're probably coming out with good news? Doesn't necessarily mean the stock's going up because, as you know, we guarantee nothing here. But give our viewers a look under the hood of what a plus 51 means.
Sure. So basically, if you're within 15 or 20 points of zero, you're bordering on neutral, right? Plus 19 is like leaning neutral, leaning bear at bullish, but not really that strong. Once you get over 20, you're definitely bullish. Once you get into the 40, 50, 60 range, you're very firmly bullish. You have conviction. Anything in the 80s or 90s is rare. We've seen it. Some examples would be, Peloton in the, March, April time of 2020 when everybody started working out from home, or Wayfair around that time as well when everyone's renovating. Stock was off tremendously. That was up, up in the high 80s or 90s. Those are rare, and, we're going to pound the table on those, but still 50 is very confident. We have a high percentage of winners at that point. It's not a lock. Of course, there's no guarantees, but this is a trade that I'm excited to make personally, and excited for all of the LikeFolio members. When they see 51, they're going to go after it.
Yeah, that's pretty positive there. But if you look at the stock chart over the last 7 months, you understand why this stock has sold off, falling knife for a few months, Landon, but finally starting to get a base here. Maybe this is what, from 2.5 years ago where the stock was here at this point. Maybe, the pull forward got way ahead of itself. Obviously it did, because stock has sold off. But great stuff, as always, on the data for Roku going into earnings. Appreciate it, Landon. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
All right. That's Landon Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com, breaking down the data on Roku.